jobs outside of education. And our own state compensation technical work group study clearly shows that I should be making at least $7 more an hour. I'm donating about $9,000 a year.
Deborah,
Yes.
if you have more comments, please give them to Cindy and we will
Okay, thank you very much.
read them, we promise. Thank you very much. Melanie Bennett.
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank the board for giving us the opportunity to speak before you. If I could crave your indulgence, I was given a story to tell by one of my coworkers who unfortunately was not able to make it. If I can crave your indulgence, I would like to read her story and reserve my own for the next meeting perhaps. Thank you. My name is Melanie Bennett. I am a 13-year paraprofessional in the district. I have 2 daughters who have gone through the district as well. One of them gets her MFA on Friday. I thank Inglemoor IB program for that. She's done great. She did it all in 6 years. Anyway, this is from Linda Crick, who is also a paraeducator at Woodinville High School. First, I would like to thank you for listening to my story that Melanie is about to tell. I have worked for North Shore School District for over 10 years as a paraeducator, and I love my job very much. I chose this profession to work with special needs kids because I knew I would enjoy the work and because I knew I would be of help. I have been a one-on-one for the last 4 years with a nonverbal, low-functioning student, and with all the work I have put in, his parents have noticed a huge difference, such as he is now playing the piano and memorizing songs, which in itself is a big thing because he can't tell the difference between a quarter or a dime. When I tell people what I do, the common response is, it takes a special kind of person to do that work. I can tell you I've heard that many times myself. For the last 4 or so years, I've had to work 2 jobs because my income is not able to pay for rent, etc. I recently had to leave my job at the mall because having to work until 9 p.m. and getting up to be at work at 6 a.m. was impossible. I had to move out of the district because the cost to live in the North Shore District was too high. It now takes me a half hour and 45 minutes to commute from my home. I can only imagine how much worse that's going to be once they start charging us for 405. I guess I could go to work in the district that I'm now living in, but I've been in the North Shore area through all of my career and would like to finish it out in the North Shore School District. I have 2 kids who are now in college and both graduated from Buffalo High School, and I am a single mom. I need more money to be able to live and to enjoy life. I'm really tired of living from paycheck to paycheck. I hope to be retiring in the next 4 years, so this is an important time for me to be able to save some money. Thank you again for listening, and I really hope you will take into consideration what has been said here today. I love my chosen profession.
Thank you, Melanie. Dan Hamer.
Thank you for allowing me to address you. My name is Dan Hamer, and I'm the father of 5 children, including 2 African-American boys, Derek, who's a sophomore at Woodinville, and Reggie, an 8th grader at Timbercrest. I'm coming to you tonight to make you aware of the failure of this school district to provide a safe environment for African-American students. When we were forced to remove our son from the final 2 months of 6th grade 2 years ago, because Eastridge administration refused to protect my son from a racist bully, I honestly hoped that things might change. The administration there did not think that comments like, "You dumb nigger," "I don't like colored people," and "don't let your brown skin touch me" were racist, and played any role in the torment my son was subjected to by a racist bully. Somehow my orphan son from Africa, who was in special education, was supposed to just deal with it. Unfortunately, it's only gotten worse. Now it is a new school, Timbercrest, but the same lack of understanding of racism exists. My son and another African-American student had their lives threatened on multiple occasions by an 8th grade student at Timbercrest. He told one African-American student I'm going to kill you and Reggie and then kill myself. These came after horrible comments about the KKK, lynchings, and being subhuman because they're black. Even after a short suspension for the first death threat, he was allowed back in school briefly, but he made another threat to a friend of my son, saying, "How are you going to feel when your friends are dead?" For this threat, the young man received an even shorter suspension and returned to school yesterday. We kept our son home for safety reasons. I was told an assessment was conducted by the school psychologist to assure the young racist was safe to return to school. It turns out that according to the school psychologist, he did not make an assessment. And had he known all the facts, he would have come to another conclusion. Those were his words. It wasn't until I became aware of this whole situation and spoke to everyone who would listen yesterday, including the superintendent, that this young man was not allowed to attend school today. However, now I'm being told by Chris Biglio, who is supposed to deal with racial issues in the district, that as soon as this young man brings a letter from a mental health professional, he will be allowed back in school. The racial hatred is not really an issue, and he will be welcomed back immediately. In other words, this young man could be back in school tomorrow. If this is the case, then Dr. Biglio's position should be eliminated from your budget, as he provides no value.
It is.
I would like to think I just have a brief.
But I can't allow you to identify employees by name, so
Okay.
please.
I would
keep
like to
that.
think that Black Lives Matter to the North Shore School District, but my experience is proving otherwise. Instead of getting this dangerous young man the help that he needs and deserves, you are risking the lives of my son and every other African American student in this district. I will not stand quietly by and allow that to happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll provide you copies.
Ken Smith?
Thank you.
Questions?
No, I don't think so, thank you.
Hi, my name is Ken Smith, and I want to thank you, give you 3 thank yous and 1 request. So the first thank you is that you take public comment seriously, and I know that you do, and I appreciate that. There's been many things brought forth already tonight, or this afternoon I'll bring some too. I also wanted to say thank you for updating district policies regarding expressions of concerns. Brought the issue of the hotline last time. That's still not made it to your agenda yet, but there's some others that have, so I wanted to thank you for the progress there. And I also wanted to thank the board president in a prior conversation that we had directing some of my concerns to the state auditor. As most of you know, the state auditor is in their audit process right now, wrapping that up. And so I have shared those concerns with the audit committee member, who is Director McCravey, and with the auditor. They've been working through that, and we met, the auditor, myself, and audit committee member McCravey met with the auditor today, and they gave an update on the concerns that I have brought to them. They are almost done with the audit. Several of the issues that I brought to them are beyond the scope of their audit, and I think it was a little surprising to both audit committee member McCravey and myself that some of the issues that we thought would have been within their purview were not. And it's just kind of like the notion of, you know, you hired a gardener to do certain work and they pull out the weeds and they prune the trees, and they just didn't prune the trees. And so it'd be important, I think, for all of you to attend the exit conference to find out what they did find on the matters they looked at and the other matters that they did not look at. And so the audit did not look at everything. The one request relates to accountability and transparency, and it's the bond issue, item number 16, and you're hearing first reading today. And then in section 13 on page 24, you have that in your board packet, it talks about the ongoing disclosures that go out to the bond market, to the people who actually buy the bond. There's also perhaps ongoing disclosures or initial disclosures to the taxpayers. How much is this bond going to cost us? That information was not available when we voted on that, but it could be available now that those bonds have been issued. So if you could ask the individuals when they talk about that, but putting forth the schedule of what's the cost to the average taxpayer, even at like on a $400,000 home, what's the cost of that through the life of the bonds as you issue them, just so that we have the transparency of what is the actual cost of the bonds that we have done, because we, as taxpayers, have not yet seen that. All right, so thank you very much, and the one simple request.
Thank you, Ken. Sherry Freilich?
My name is Sherry Freilich. In 2002, when I started working at Kenmore Junior High School, I was recently divorced, 2 boys in elementary school, and a mortgage. My paycheck as a paraeducator in the FSA program, working 6.5 hours a day, just barely paid my mortgage, which at that time was $1,200. There was not that much left over. In order to make ends meet, I hosted exchange students in my home. Hosting students was definitely not something I would have done if I hadn't needed the money. I felt resentful that I had to have strangers in my home because all these years I didn't earn enough money from my job. I had to cook for them, help them with homework, and sometimes transport them. Did I mention I had 2 boys of my own? I was overtired and stressed most of the time, and my home certainly didn't feel like my own. As things like food, insurance, and gas got more expensive, I had to take out a home equity line of credit in case I couldn't meet my monthly bills. And when I needed a new roof, I had no choice but to take it out of my HELOC. Now I still have a first mortgage, but now I also have a second mortgage, and that which together is $1,500, while my paycheck is still not enough to cover both my mortgages or make ends meet. I tried to refinance my home, but because of my debt-to-income ratio, I don't qualify. I've worked hard all these years to keep my home, and now I hope I don't lose it.
Thank you, Sherry. Sherry Albertson? Cheryl Albertson, sorry.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Albertson, and I'm one member of the 6-lady team that does school assistance at Woodmore Elementary School. Between the 6 of us, we have over 100 years of experience as school assistants. We have a total of 18 kids and 23 grandkids between us. 3 of us have 2 or more years of college, 1 of us has a bachelor's degree, 1 of us has a master's degree and was a certificated teacher in another state, and 1 of us is a member of Mensa, so we're a pretty diverse group of folks. I've heard people ask, why should you get more money? You just watch kids play. If that was true, you wouldn't owe us any more money. You wouldn't be getting your money's worth, because we do a lot more than just watch kids play. We're working with kids on behavior and social skills every day. We're trying to prevent bullying and make sure that our playground is a safe place, both physically and emotionally, for our kids to play. We're teaching kids about the bystander mentality and how that contributes to bullying and how they can be part of the solution. Short of bullying, we're teaching students to stand up for themselves and to not give another student the power to make them have a bad day. Some of them just don't understand that, and we work with them all the time to try to take that power back. We know that kids struggle the most with unstructured time. Some districts have dealt with that by eliminating recess altogether, which doesn't do kids any good physically, or emotionally for that matter. Others have instituted highly structured recesses. But to me, this just delays the inevitable, because these kids need to learn how to function in unstructured time sometime. And if we're not doing it in elementary school, they're going to be trying to deal with it in junior high when the kids are older and it's harder to teach them. So instead of avoiding the hard stuff, we're tackling it head on. We're in a unique position because we meet kids in kindergarten and we see them every school day all the way through 6th grade. We really get to know them. We see their progress. where they struggle, where they need guidance. We build bonds with them and really work with the kids to learn these skills and to help them feel good about their accomplishments. I ran into a former student a couple of years ago that was about 24 years old at a wedding. We had a nice little chat, and as we were saying goodbye, he said, you know, I really need to thank you for something. And I said, what? And he said, I always felt like you liked me, even when I wasn't very likable. That's why we do this job. We're making a difference every day. We're not the teachers in the classroom, but we're helping teach kids every day to be happy, kind, empathetic people. And that's huge. That's why we've all been doing it so long, even though we don't make much money at it. But we shouldn't have to be poor, though, because this is important, critical work. None of us are able to work truly full-time. One of us works 6 hours, myself 5.5, 3 of us work 4, and one only works 2 hours a day. Most of us would work more if more hours were available. And on top of that, several of us work split shifts, which makes it difficult or impossible to have a second job. And it also makes it hard to get subs. And it's not very respectful of our time when we're kind of set aside for that huge chunk of time when we're not even getting paid for that much. So thank you very much for the time today and for all the hard work you do. And another time I'll come talk to you about crossing guard duties, because believe me, that is a whole can of worms besides. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cheryl. So on behalf of the board, I just want to thank everyone who came to speak with us tonight. It can be a very unsatisfying experience because it's all one way, but I can assure you that we do listen, and we appreciate your engagement and coming to talk to us. So the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? Second? Is there any discussion on these items? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. And the consent agenda does pass unanimously. Next item on the agenda is the third reading of Board Policy 7324. That revision requested at the last meeting has been included in the policy. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion?
So, after our discussion last meeting, I went and I dug through policies, although I have to say I didn't dig through every policy, to see if there were other examples of when the word administrators were used, as opposed to calling out the superintendent / designee. I did find one more. I have to say, I didn't go through every single policy. I did find one more, which was 6420, which is professional growth and development. And then I had an idea, because a lot of these policies were written with assistance, to say the least, from WASDA, and I don't know really anyone at WASDA. I asked Janet if she knew someone who I could forward a question to, and that's what this is right here. So forwarded on this is Heidi Maynard, who is the lawyer, the director of policy and legal services at WASDA, to ask if if it is a standard with WASDA that the word administrators would cover all the administrators, including the superintendent. And she said that that is, in her experience, includes the superintendent. So just want to let you know about my poking around.
I just photocopied it for all of you. Amy wanted you all to be aware of that. So.
I forgot to do that before I left my house today, so Jen printed it out for me.
Any other discussion on this item?
Well, I know that last time I suggested, I don't think that there's board support for adding superintendents into the policy. The reason I felt it was important is that we have 5 superintendents now that aren't really at the same level as the rest of administration. A question was asked about the appropriateness of having dinner, and the superintendent said yes, which caused us, we were violating policy because of a superintendent suggestion. I thought it was important to go ahead and say superintendents in this policy. And I appreciate you finding out that, you know, administration or administrators include superintendent in Heidi's experience. Something that came from the audit meeting today that I think is really important for the board to think about is the auditor said the district can go above and beyond in our policies as we feel is necessary. So we can choose to make our current policies to be better. I think that this would be a better ad unless one of the other board members says, you know, I think that that would be a better ad as well. I'm not going to make that motion again.
So I just want to clarify that when Larry advised us of the invitation that we had to dinner, that he was very clear on who was inviting us and what his relationship with was with the district. So I think we each had an opportunity to weigh in on it at that point. So I would say if we're talking about it, it's a shared responsibility. So clarifying it with gifts, meals, or favors, I think is an excellent clarification.
I would like to say, first of all, I appreciate that we have the democratic process here and open public meetings where we're able to dialogue like this, even though it might be comfortable. I know it's uncomfortable for me sometimes in our audience and our administrators, but this is a process that we have to go through and not have it behind the scenes, but have it in front of the public. So first of all, I just wanted to put that out there because these kind of conversations can be, I think, difficult in the open. But I did personally ask Larry, and this isn't an attack on Larry, this is my experience when I first came on the board. I did ask whether this dinner was appropriate because where I come from in my business setting, we cannot take any types of gratuities from vendors, and that includes meals. And so I just had kind of this red flag, even though I didn't know about the policy. And I asked, and the feedback to me was that, to the best of my recollection, was there's a lot of different boards going, and therefore it's okay because it's not just the North Shore School District. And that was my understanding at the time. So as a new board member, Larry or another superintendent might be my conduit to ask what are the policies. So that's why I did appreciate that Dawn brought that up, because that's, you know, I'm not going to go to a lower level administrator to ask how we might, you know, whether this is okay or not. So I think the more clear we are, the better. I'm not really, you know, either way it doesn't matter, but I do think that adding meals in does make it more clear. And when I was going back and reading the policy, one thing that I found interesting is it does also say anyone that hopes to be a vendor. So I think our conversation, Larry, was he wasn't a direct vendor at the time. So, and I'm not saying that you intentionally misled me. I'm saying it's great that we're having this conversation right now and that we just need to make it really clear, because I know it was really uncomfortable for me, and I'll say it again, to find out later that I had been involved in taking anything and that it wasn't the right thing to do. So I just don't want to be in that kind of a position again, and I'm not placing blame. So the clearer we are, the better, I think.
Okay. And I'm just going to ask Larry to have an opportunity to tell us his recollection of the conversation and why that was a distinct opportunity in his mind. I think Candy spoke to us at a board meeting a while ago as well.
That Superintendent Francois was being attacked by
No,
asking to add in the group of 5 superintendents into this list. That wasn't my intention.
I realized that. Kimberly was reporting on a conversation that she had, and I think it was
Can I just add
a good
really quick
opportunity
before
for
that?
Larry to be able to express what his thinking was at that time as well. It has
And
nothing to do with what you asked.
I think that I would like to hear that. I just want to say what it morphed into and further for us over the last year and a half that I've been on the board is then when we went to the legislative day on the Hill, then it was just me, Dawn, Sandy, Larry, and Merle at that dinner. So it became where we were doing a group, and then it became more specific to our board. So I just think we have to be very clear about it. So, and then appreciate your opinion.
I agree, and I think we also have a responsibility personally to know our policies and make sure that we are following them as well, so.
Agreed, that's why I asked the
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, so I'm going to just ask Larry, if you want to.
I don't really have anything to add other than what's been said. It's not a direct vendor relationship, but I understand that it's a little too close for comfort. And so as I communicated with the board immediately after this issue came up, I had a follow-up conversation with Mr. Kirkley and apprised him of the concern and stated what our intentions would be and wouldn't be moving forward. And he was very gracious about that. And I welcome the addition and clarifications to the policy. I think they're helpful.
And my personal thinking about adding the clarification on meals, I thought that was a great add as well. Excuse me, I have a little frog in my throat. In terms of calling out superintendent, and this is one reason why I want to get some advice from WASDA, because I have noticed as we go through policies that they don't get edited but once every 10 years, it seems. So if someone 10 years from now was looking at it, wondering why in this instance we had called out superintendents but we hadn't in others, I didn't know if that was relevant or not. So if it wasn't necessary to call out superintendent, if it might save some confusion for another board down the road, that was my thinking too, that if it was in essence redundant, that we didn't need it. But in terms of adding the clarification about meals and what is gifts, I thought that was definitely a good add.
Yep, I agree. We review policies every 5 years just for
Okay.
clarification.
Every 5 years.
Although we have some friends that we see on an annual basis, if not more often. So one of which is on our agenda tonight. So, Dawn, did you have something further?
I already made my statement. I was going to respond to that, but I don't see the point. It's getting late.
I do just want to read this really quick. It says, prospective vendors or other firms or individuals who have had or hope to have transactions. So I think that means anyone, basically anyone that is in business of working with a school district or a public entity would be out of, would not be someone that we would, and I know Merle has worked with other school districts, so in the future I think anyone that works in that area we should avoid.
So it is everyone's understanding that superintendents are included in the word administration. And can we have that as part of the minutes so that 10 years from now, when it's on its second provision, everyone understands that?
I think that was the question to Heidi. The essence of the question to Heidi Maynard was, does the word administrators and staff include everyone? And the answer is yes.
Understand that. I'd like it included in the minutes.
I'll take duly noted. Any further discussion on this? Okay, we'll call for a vote. And Board Policy 7324, as revised, passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is second reading of Board Policies number 9110, 9300, 9323, and 9330. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion on this side? And I'll just say that when Sherry was talking about the DUI assembly at Inglemoor, I happened to be on campus that day and ran into someone I didn't know and had a conversation with the ground supervisor, fairly new to the district, Steve Simpson. And I just passed on board thanks for how well they address with their few men, how well they address the needs of the facilities in the district. And he just said he fairly recently left a career in asphalt paving and has come to the district and really appreciates the climate and culture of the district and enjoys working here. So it's a really nice fit. So I thought I'd pass that on to you. Any discussion on this item?
And on a particular policy.
We're talking about capital facilities, operation and maintenance of district facilities. It's the crew that maintains the facilities.
Okay.
Seeing no further discussion, we will call for a vote. And those policies pass unanimously as well. Next item on the agenda is the district budget status report for March 2015. Do board members have any questions on this? Seeing none, we'll move to the next agenda item, which is first reading, project acceptance for April 2015. Any questions on this one?
Yeah, I did on the Hollywood Hill upgrade. What was the ventilation upgrade for? Why did Hollywood Hill need a ventilation upgrade?
This was the completion of a project at Hollywood Hill that included upgrades to its electrical room. I'm trying to read my handwriting, sorry. Part of the boiler upgrade that was done previously, so it was completing the work that was done. Right.
And that's ventilation,
Yes.
boiler?
Yes,
Is that,
sorry.
is that part of the heating
Yes, it
system?
is.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, seeing no further questions on that item, we'll move on to the next item, which is first reading of resolution number 720, the bond sale. And I'll invite Lydia to come up to the mic again. You wanted to reintroduce our folks for comments.
Yes, Big Shover is going to come up and make a few comments about the resolution.
Okay, great, thank you.
Or Ryan first, I'm sorry. I apologize. Ryan Swanson will be first.
All right.
Thank you all. My name is Ryan Swanson. I'm with Piper Jaffray, as aforementioned. We are gearing up to do the next portion of your 2014 bond authorization. As you know, on February 11th, 2014, the community approved a bond issue for $177,500,000. We sold the first tranche of that bond issue last year in June. We sold $80 million of the authorization, leaving $97,500,000 left to issue. At this time, it is our plan to move forward with that sale. We would conduct the sale on June 23rd and close the transaction on July 9th. With a long-term plan that has been set in place, we intend to size the bonds so it will meet voter expectations on the communicated tax rates. That would include a holistic plan that incorporates maintenance and operations, technology rates, and the bonds themselves. We will structure the bonds so it takes into anticipation future growth. And we will, of course, maximize investor interest in the bonds by maintaining the district's high credit ratings. Of course, Moody's rates the district AA1, which is the second highest rating available. And Standard & Poor's Investor Service rates the school district AA-, also a very high rating. And that's basically all I wanted to say tonight. Did the board have any questions about the plan for the bonds?
How do you affect the rating? What do you do? Yeah.
After 17 years working in this industry, I try and craft a presentation that will be presented to the rating agencies that will address all of their concerns, all of their everything that they would desire to know about the district, the community, what the proceeds will be used for, how they will be structured, basically all of the strengths and weaknesses of this particular school district in Washington State, and try and help alleviate the fears of Moody's that they may have.
I've never seen one of those. Could I see that and
Absolutely.
do that?
Yeah,
Thank
we can
you.
provide copies of that.
Okay. Also, what do interest rates? I mean, we have pretty high interest right now. How does that affect?
How do
How
interest
does
rates
that affect? Yes.
So essentially, when you issue bonds, it's like taking out a very large loan. And right now, actually, interest rates are near historical lows.
Okay.
which is actually beneficial in that you'd be borrowing at low rates right now. What they'll do in the future, I wish I knew. If I knew what interest rates were going to do, I would be a very wealthy man. I'm not. But we anticipate that now is a good time because we are near historic lows.
In the low, okay, thanks. I think I meant that.
Oh,
Said fine.
no problem.
So we had an earlier question. I'm sure you've heard it from an audience member. It was about a $400,000 home, right?
I believe he was trying to ask for further communication on what the bonds would actually cost individual taxpayers.
Right.
Off the cuff, my best answer to that question is that every year you, of course, all receive tax bills for your property values, and you can utilize that tax bill to figure out what your individual taxing jurisdictions will charge you. I don't know on my bill, I'm in Seattle, I don't know if the school district portion for the different levies that the district have are broken out in the bill themselves, but you can look at the King County website, and that gives great detail. I would recommend using that as a communication source because that is specific to every individual homeowner, as opposed to trying to provide a generic answer to every community member, because as you know, all of your constituents have very different homes and home values throughout the community.
I think that's why he said a $400,000 home. Do you know what the impact would be to a taxpayer on this new set of bonds going out?
I don't right now. What will happen when we sell the bonds, the day that we actually sell the bonds is when interest rates will be set. And at that point, I could definitely figure that out. But at this moment in time, I do not have that information in front of me. It's you, ma'am.
And also you can see the rate per thousand in your 2015 tax bill for North Shore School District specifically. And the rate per thousand has gone down from 2014.
I have a question. When I was able to attend our last bond sale, there was much excitement over, as the sale went through, that we had gotten a great deal and many people were interested in our bonds. Are you anticipating that the market is still as hot, or have things cooled a bit since then?
Of course, with every district, it's different. North Shore School District is a recognized name, and you do have, as I said, very high credit ratings, so I would expect your bonds to meet great investor interest. I will say that currently, we actually sold bonds this morning for Chehalis School District. Don't want to call them out, they aren't quite as highly rated as you are, and so it was a tougher process, but we were able to market the bond successfully and achieve all of their goals. So, you guys being a stronger district, I would expect very solid results going forward.
Thank you.
I just have two short questions. What is the interest rate on a bond right now, approximately? Like, what are you, if I were coming to buy the bond for the North Shore School District?
That's a great and very common question. The best way to answer that would be the overall loan itself. It depends on the duration, how long the loan is, and how that bond is structured. I would say generically, I would expect the borrowing cost to be under 3%. That would be a true interest cost, which might be, you might think of that as like an APR, the equivalent thereof. The bond, the overall sale itself was broken up into pieces because obviously you guys won't be able to pay the bonds all back in one balloon payment. That would kill the taxpayers. So the loan is broken up into pieces that are sold on an amortization schedule, one maturity per year. So the shortest rates are going to be below 1%, and the longest rates are going to be something over 3%. So that's where the true interest cost comes in. It would be something of an average of all those maturities. And again, I would expect the borrowing of this kind to be somewhere in the 3% range, if not a little bit more.
There's not a tax difference between Snohomish and King County when it comes to the bonds. Is that correct, Lydia? Because you know how there's a different tax rates for homes when it comes to Snohomish versus King County, but I would assume for the bond it would be the same tax rate?
Yes,
to
our taxing
homeowners?
authority is the same across the two
Okay.
counties. What the counties don't share is like a fire protection district or a county rural road tax that the different counties have, but our school is the same across the two, our school taxes.
I have a quick question. So, just what you said about Chehalis just got me thinking. We often, as a district, will compare our financial performance against other school districts of similar size. Are interest rates on bonds public records, so we might be able to compare how other school districts are doing on the bond market?
We could, I could absolutely compile that information. I don't know if it's a fair comparison, again, because
It's
just
not
like every,
apples.
Yeah, because every homeowner has a different assessed value on their home. Every school district has a different story to tell to a rating agency and to an investor. So Chehalis is a very different community
Right.
than North Shore, as you would imagine. I can definitely compile information on what recent bond sales have achieved, but again, I don't know if that would be apples to apples.
Okay.
But I could compile that information.
Yeah, we have a list of 16 districts that we, on a regular basis, compare our financial performance to. I mean, what do you think, Lydia? Is this something that would be helpful to get us at least species of apples, close enough that we could kind of gauge our performance, how we're doing out there?
Those specific 16 districts may not use Piper Jaffray as their bond
Oh, okay.
underwriter.
So it's not public record.
And then
per se.
it's, someone like Lake Washington has been unsuccessful with their bonds, so they haven't sold bonds lately to compare to.
Has Issaquah? I don't know.
Pardon me?
Issaquah?
Yeah.
I wonder how they've done, because they're pretty similar.
We do represent as what
That might be curious to know.
I can absolutely, I can get that information for Lydia, no trouble. The one other thing to comment too is the bond market is live, just like the stock market. So every single day, you can wind up with a different result. So I could go to market with the North Shore bond in January of this year and then get a result, and then the exact same bond come back 6 months later, and it would not be.
Due to market forces.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. But I can get that information.
Yeah, it would be interesting to know.
For the ones they serve.
Yes, yes, thank you.
Sandy and I can attest that there was great excitement over how fast the sale went last time, so we're expecting just the same thing this time.
Okay, I will pass that along.
You guys gonna go again?
It's kind of like watching paint dry. It was very educational and fascinating process, but I think one probably was enough.
I completely understand. Our goal is to make it boring. If it's exciting,
Yeah,
that's
right,
wrong.
right. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions from board members? No? All right, thank you so much for waiting until this point in the agenda. If you need to leave, it's certainly fine.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Next item on the agenda is first reading of board policy number 4312, complaints concerning staff or programs. And that just has the insertion that we discussed. Do board members have any questions on this?
I just had a thought. Just the language, the insertion of, complaints against the superintendent shall be handled by the board directly. I was wondering if we wanted to add a little more detail to that, or if that would be more appropriate. If we want to specifically talk about the board president, if that's more appropriate in the procedure, that's fine. I just thought perhaps a little bit more detail around the language might be helpful.
Off the top of my head, just looking at the wording of the rest of the policy, I would think that any further procedural detail, any further detail would be procedural, would be more appropriate for the procedure.
For the procedure.
Which will be updated, we'll update the procedure to match the
Based on
policy once the policy is updated by the board.
And this was the recommended language from Buzz Porter as well.
So is this saying that when there's a complaint brought against a superintendent, I don't want to say Larry, but anyone that would be a superintendent of our district, that goes directly to the board president?
Well, or that was my question, is that I would think that if someone wants to go about, it would be helpful to have a little bit more.
So that's what they're
detail.
talking
That's
about
what-
in
Is that appropriate for the procedure,
clarifying in
appropriate for the
procedure.
policy?
And
That's what I'm
procedure
trying to
is not
understand.
what we craft. We decide on the policy. So the policy drives the procedure. So the procedure will be constructed based on this new language.
It's not fully accurate. We have approved the procedure for 2020. I think it would be appropriate to bring this procedure forward for the board to give approval to as well.
Since it involves interaction with the
Yeah.
board, maybe that's why.
It's going to be pretty straightforward, but would board members like to
Well,
see that, the policy and procedure?
yeah, because I don't know that it is straightforward, because that's the question I'm asking. Is it going to you? Is it going to the whole board? Like, how do we?
Yeah, it's the same procedure that was recently laid out in a letter that I had written, so, but we could certainly bring that in.
That would be helpful to me. Proposed.
I'm sorry, I shut myself out and
I
I'm
know,
trying
I
to get
did.
myself back in, so I'm a bit distracted here. Yes, so the request is to see a draft of a revised procedure, presuming that this policy language would be adopted by the board.
Sorry, can you restate that?
Well, normally, the policy is approved first, and then the procedure is next, but we're asking for both the policy and the procedure. So he's going to design the procedure with the assumption that the policy will be approved as we've got. Does that make sense?
I just think anytime like we have a duty, like a duty, it's good to know what does that encompass, a specific duty.
Exited out as well, so.
It's hard, you can't go between the policies and
I know.
the agenda. Sorry.
Any other questions or comments on this particular policy? Seeing none, we'll move to the next agenda item, which is first reading of Board Policy 3224, student dress. Any questions or discussion on this?
So I was reading in our board briefing that one of the issues was that there's the e-cigarettes and the vapor cigarettes. And I don't know that just adding tobacco product actually addresses the different types of vapors that are out there because they're not tobacco. So I'm wondering if there isn't a different way to word that, that would encompass, because I think that's what we were trying to get at in my understanding of the board briefing.
To make the student dress
Yeah.
policy
Rebecca-
consistent
to-
with
to
our,
all of it, yeah.
with our rights and responsibilities.
So Rebecca Kavanaugh is our new health nursing supervisor, so she's
Okay.
going to address.
Hi, Rebecca.
Hi. Thank you. So within our policies and the rights and responsibilities around tobacco, all of tobacco devices are included in that word tobacco. And that is consistent across the policies. And so with this, because of the fact that vaping and e-cigarettes are being marketed to students, there is more gear, clothing available for them to bring to school and wear with advertising. And so that's why we wanted to include that in here. But that the term tobacco does cover all of those areas.
So what's the chemical that's in them? Because tobacco means a leaf to me, and the e-cigarettes or the vapor things aren't that, right? It's nicotine.
It may be
Okay.
nicotine. It may not contain any nicotine. Those devices, it's really unclear. There's no regulation through the FDA on them at this time. And so it's really unclear what's really in what it can be marketed as nicotine drops. There are also preparations of marijuana that can be used in vaporizers that you can get high on. So, and it's not, we're not able to determine what's in the devices. And so they have been lumped in with just the term tobacco that covers cigarettes, cigars, pipe tobacco, etc.
We have in our student handbook last year that we actually, I feel like we added language somewhere last year that talked about
We did, but it does say, I just went there, and it says tobacco includes but is not limited to cigarettes, cigars, snuff, smoking tobacco, smokeless tobacco, nicotine, and any other tobacco innovation.
That's what we add here. I mean, just as a suggestion.
Well, we're not actually lining out everything that falls under the term obscene, or sexual, or drug, or alcohol, or gang. So I think it would be a lot of words for just tobacco. I like leaving tobacco.
That would also require a change in many other district policies to spell that out.
So from the standpoint of this policy regarding student dress, the insertion of tobacco product, we would consider to include anything that might be directly tobacco related in traditional sense, as well as vaping devices or any of those. And from the sense of our R&Rs, we sufficiently parcel that out to include vaping or e-cigarettes or any other tobacco innovations. I like that. It's kind of a good catch-all phrase that puts you a little bit ahead of the creativity curve, I guess. So it seems that maybe we're, from the standpoint of policy and the student R&Rs, that we're sufficiently covered, it would seem.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question, Kimberly?
Sure.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments on this? All right. Next item on the agenda is our old friend, board policy number 2410. First reading for this year. High school graduation requirements. Do board members have any questions?
I do. So, and this is, again, the ever-changing policy, right? Trying to keep up with the states. But I was looking specifically, there's that second paragraph that starts out, meeting full IB diploma requirements along with 21 credits. I mean, do we have to adjust that to also link in with the 24 that's coming with the class of 2018, right? 2019. Do you know what I? So I'm on the first page, second paragraph. It specifically talks about, and I understand what it's about. It's about the fact, reconciling the district graduation requirements with IB graduation requirements, but because it specifically talks about 21 credits, and we know that's not going to be accurate in a couple years, I don't know if we're doing this now, if we should think about adding language to make it so maybe we don't have to do it again.
I feel like it'll be again, I don't know why. We certainly can adjust that and put something in there that that paragraph would work for the class of 15, 16, 17, 18, and then we can add 19 below.
But it will definitely.
I know we've tried to move.
Is this trying to cross smoke or something?
Yeah.
Sorry, we've tried to move many of the more granular requirements into the procedure so that we can more easily update them. And so I think it's a good catch, and maybe changing that to say meeting the full IB requirements as well as the required number of credits.
Yeah, maybe something more general, maybe taking out the 21 and just making it more general.
Then we can modify the procedure without having to come back and modify the policy. And the procedures where we tend to have the breakdowns for the different requirements for different classes based on each year's legislative session.
Yes, that's a good idea, I can make that adjustment.
All right, so we'll make that change for next time. That's a good catch, thank you.
I was just at the IB, some IB information last night, and I don't think there's even, with the IB has its diploma requirements. I don't know that there's a number of credits even associated with the IB, and maybe if you just took the number out, all the credit component, that if you meet the full IB diploma requirements, the state, the testing, blah, 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 that might cover it, then whatever they're doing credit number requirement wise.
That's a good suggestion, I can work with Chris and Vicki.
Okay. Heather?
Yes.
So can you explain the inclusion of waiver of high school graduation credits, that whole section?
The part that we're adding,
Yeah.
So with the new requirement for the class of 2019 for 24 credits, the state board directed school districts to add language into policy regarding the 2-credit waiver. And through the model policy and the WAC, it specifies some of the reasons why a district or superintendent or designee could waive those 2 credits. And so we have listed those right out of from the WAC, the Washington Administrative Code. And then we have to have a policy in place that specifies that the students can waive up to 2 credits, but we are not allowed to waive the 17 core academic credits. So those 2 credits that can be waived by a student would be out of the 7 remaining elective or flexible credits.
It's almost, it reads to me like, well, why are you even making requirements? It looks like everybody can waive out of them. Because it says unusual circumstances may include, but are not limited to. So that just kind of reads like it can be anything.
Yeah, so what I would need to do is to work with the high school principals and to really be clear and further define what those 2 credits would look like and what would be the scenarios or the situations where we would determine as a district that we would allow for that credit waiver so that we were consistent across the system. So we have, that's 2019, so we have time to talk about that and process that further. I think that we certainly are viewing it as, it speaks to, I think there's a deadline of May or something to that effect, that it would be something that would have to be requested prior. We would set our own internal deadline, but they recommend like May 1st to request a waiver of those 2 credits. It certainly would be that senior year, it would be something that in their freshman year they would request a 2-credit waiver because we would want to get as many students as we could to that 24 credit.
In doing that, I know that we've run into some issues with people who have changed from our district to another or from another to our district where it's been different and a little difficult for the understanding to go on. Will you also be looking at Lake Washington and the surrounding districts to see if we match the way they're handling it?
We will do that through, we have several avenues and vehicles where we can have that conversation.
That sounds great, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is first reading of board policies 9220, 9231, and 9271. Any questions on these?
What is adequate fund balance on 9220? So it says the board shall attempt to maintain an adequate balance in the capital projects.
We have a 3%, in capital projects.
Capital projects.
I would say an adequate balance in there would be, well, we're fortunate in our school district in that our capital facilities plan is well supported by our community over 4 years. But I would look at if we weren't well supported, so given the current situation we're in now where we're having enrollment growth and we're needing to place a number of portables on an annual basis that are costing us hundreds of thousands of dollars, that we would be in a position to foresee that coming and would have maintained a sufficient reserve within the capital projects fund that we could accommodate those expenses. That came upon us, so we wouldn't be dependent upon passing a bond to provide basic infrastructure support for classrooms. So I don't know that we actually have a specific dollar figure in mind, like we do with the general fund where we have 3% undesignated reserve. We've been pretty fortunate in over the years in that we've got our unrestricted capital projects fund is pretty healthy. We use that to purchase property that isn't necessarily part of a bond measure. So, and I think we're in a really good space. I can't say exactly what the number would be, but I think we're more than adequately meeting it right now.
I mean, should we have an amount that we put on there like we do in our general fund?
I was just thinking that, and
I know we have